It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Yes, indeed. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, a new version dropped on Thursday. The new one comes out on Monday at 6 o'clock. You can check that out with Jeff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. Right now, from InsideTheBirds.com, Andrew DiCecco is here as the Eagles have made a couple of signings today. Both interesting, in my opinion. The message for one, I want to get Andrew's thoughts on this. I gave you my thoughts on it, and I will do so with Andrew DiCecco now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, Football at 4 is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com and download the PropSwap app today. Andrew, happy hour Friday, my man. What's going on?
Hey, Mike, how you doing today?
All is good, man. Friday edition, always a little extra pep in my step on the Friday, and good to have you here because I know, obviously, the Eagles made a couple of moves today. Let's start off with tight end Richard Rodgers, who is back. Not much of a surprise, I would guess. But what's to me, the message of bringing Rodgers back? I know they needed a tight end, but doesn't that kind of suggest, hey, we think we can win the East, we'll bring a veteran back up in? Like, if they don't think they're a good team, don't they just stick with a young guy, get him some playing time and experience? Instead, they go with a veteran like Richard Rodgers. I mean, is that suggesting that, hey, we think we can compete in this division?
Well, if you remember over the past number of weeks and even as recent as our last conversation, Richard Rodgers was a name that I said that the Eagles really had to bring in when, I mean, you named those three guys, Hakeem Butler and the Tyree Jacksons and Jack Stahl and all those guys that are kind of vying for the third job. I said that I wasn't a fan of any of them. And I said that the Eagles really needed to bring in Richard Rodgers, who was just sitting out there along with Trey Burton, get a veteran in there, really provide some depth. Regardless of whether you have Zach Ertz in the fold or not, you need to add a competent third or, second tight end. Richard Rodgers has shown he can be to the mix, because none of those guys that we talked about, they're back end of the roster fringe players that are long shots at best to make the roster. A lot of projects, and Hakeem Butler may be more of a practice squad option, but you really wanted to add a veteran in Richard Rodgers, who's just a technically savvy player. He's not flashy. He gives you a little bit as a blocker. He made some great catches last season and really came through. He had 24 catches for 345 yards and 2 touchdowns in 14 games, 4 starts last year. So he really stepped up, and I do think he has a little bit of juice left in the tank to bring to the offense.
Yeah, no, if you end up trading Zach Ertz, I mean, he steps in as that second guy, and he showed last year when Ertz and Goddard were banged up a little bit. He stepped in. He had a game where he had 6 catches for 85 yards. He had a game where he had 4 catches for 60 yards. He had a game where he had 3 for 53. So he has proved, as you kind of alluded to, capable as a receiver, but he's also a good blocker. So it doesn't mean if Ertz is gone and Goddard steps in that they don't have a second guy that can be a part of the pass game, right? I mean, this is a guy that in Green Bay had a pretty big year one year with 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, he was a starter in Green Bay. So, I mean, having him in the mix, like I said, if you keep Zach Ertz, well, then Richard Rodgers is as good a third tight end as you're going to find in the NFL. If you move on from Zach Ertz, which is a high probability down the road here, Richard Rodgers is proven to be a competent tight end in this league. I mean, he'd be a great number 2 tight end. Kind of gives you the best of both worlds with Dallas Goedert. You have nothing to lose if you're the Eagles by bringing him into camp. You need another veteran there to compete with some of those guys, because, like I said, the guys that you mentioned, they may be intriguing. They're young players. Tyree Jackson, the converted quarterback from Buffalo, and Hakeem Butler, of course, was a receiver, a decorated receiver at Iowa State. Now he's a tight end and struggling a little bit there as well to find his footing. They're good projects, but they're not long-term fixtures. They're not options you want to count on. If you get anything out of them, it's more of a bonus. So I think you really needed to add a veteran there to add stability.
Yep, they did that today. Richard Rodgers, it will be his 4th year with the Eagles, 24 catches, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns in 14 games last year, 29 years old. And I guess the follow-up to all this is, does bringing Rodgers back clearly signify the end of Zach Ertz, or is Rodgers here to be the third end in conjunction with Goddard and Ertz like he has been in the past?
Yeah, like I said, that signing needed to happen regardless of whether or not Zach Ertz is in their immediate future or not, because they need to that position in a big way.
All right, Andrew, they also brought in, and I know you know a little bit about wide receiver Michael Walker, who was a Boston College wide receiver, kind of a slot guy, but I saw you tweet about him. It was from 2019, but you brought it back up to the top of your timeline, so I was kind of interested in hearing your thoughts on, is he just a camp guy, or is Michael Walker a guy that has a shot to make the team?
I think he's more of a camp guy. I actually interviewed Michael Walker in the pre-draft process in 2019. 5'11", 194. He's more of in the mold of a slot receiver. He was a prolific return man in college. He was the nation's leader in kick return yards in 2018, and he also finished, I believe it was 7th or 8th in the nation in punt return yards. So he's going to give you some production there. He's a better kick returner than he is punt returner, north-south type of returner. Doesn't do a whole lot of dancing around. We had 70-ish catches, I believe, at Boston College, under 1,000 yards, under 900 yards, I even think. So he wasn't really a receiving threat there, or a prominent receiving threat there. I think he's more of a special teams guy, could push there, but I really don't see how he fits here. I think that if you're the Eagles, you're thinking, let's get a guy he played in 13 games last season. He had a couple of receptions. Let's bring a guy who has some NFL experience that can give you some quality reps in training camp, maybe push some of these young guys like the John Hightowers of the world and see what you got. He's not exactly – I think he's 25 as well. So, he's a little bit of an older young player. He's not very experienced in the league, but he came into the league, I believe, at an older age at 23. It's going to add some competition.
Yeah, of course, everybody sees like a smaller slot kind of guy and says, is he Wes Welker? Can he be that kind of guy? As you tweeted out, 4.46, a guy had some impressive numbers when he was coming into the league.
Yeah, and he has some NFL experience, and I think when you're looking at the receiver position, it's going to add a little bit of competition. But I always encourage folks, let's not get carried away. Yeah. You saw what happened with Trayvon Grimes, and that's just yet another example of why you don't want to get carried away with these end of the roster guys that are these fringe guys, these undrafted free agents. You got to let things materialize before you crown somebody as the wide receiver 5 or 6, or their new red zone guy, or their new, gadget guy, slot guy. You got to be patient and let things kind of work themselves out.
I know that, as you mentioned, everybody kind of gets excited, but some people, I know Pro Football Focus is calling Jalen Reagor like kind of the breakout candidate for 2021. You know how Eagles fans see that kind of stuff and start to go a little crazy, Andrew. But what about Reagor kind of entices you to kind of say, hey, this is the guy that can go from very minimal production to possibly big production in 2021?
Well, it's a couple of things, Mike. It's the change in his demeanor and attitude, and I think it's also the creativity and openness of the coaching staff. And when I say openness, I mean open to sort of scheming around their strengths instead of kind of pigeonholing them into a hole and making them do things that maybe they're not as adept at doing. And I think when the Eagles selected Jalen Reagor, they envisioned him being a multifaceted receiver that they can get the ball to in a number of ways. And he really was used in a vanilla manner last season. They weren't very creative in getting him the football. That was Jalen's fault, because I thought that he was his route running efficiency was lacking. I thought he squeezed too often to the sideline, didn't show a lot of awareness or crisp, suddenness in his route running, and I thought that he lost concentration at times. I also wasn't crazy about his body language when things weren't going his way. But, when you heard Aaron Moorhead talk I guess it was last week or earlier this week, he said he was a lot calmer. Things starting to settle down and that makes perfect sense. That's very typical with the second-year player. I think that he's a more confident player now. Remember, he was kind of thrown into the Philadelphia fan base, and he wasn't he wasn't used to being subject of criticism, so he had to get used to that as well. And like I said, every young player adjusts to the NFL, to the professional level at different rates. And Justin Jefferson was an immediate success, but that doesn't necessarily mean just because Jalen Reagor wasn't that he's not going to be. So I think that the coaching staff, they've said all the right things. Jalen Reagor seems to be in the right mindset to sort of take off in year 2. But again, we have to see everything sort of take shape in this summer and see how it goes.
Andrew DiCecco, football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. You were last on Tuesday, so I didn't get a chance to ask you because obviously Andrew knows a lot about drafted guys, undrafted guys coming into the league. And Jamie Newman, the quarterback, he didn't even make it to training camp. Are you surprised that Newman was not even able to get out of OTAs?
Yes, I was surprised that he couldn't get out of OTAs because – it's OTAs. It's very basic. You're not really. You're sort of just the surface level stuff. You have to be. They have to really not see, or you have to be a very long ways away from being a player who can contend for a roster spot in just 6 weeks from now. He must have been so much of a project that the coaching staff didn't feel like they had enough time to work with him. And I said something that he cleared waivers, and no other team really put in a claim for him. I think he's going to be around, and he might be one of those early to mid-season practice squad guys that people sign and they see if they can kind of get him into a futures contract. I just right now he's just so far away from being and it's really stems from his accuracy. He's very erratic with the football, and if you're not making those throws in OTAs where things are very basic and they're sort of like it's an introductory course.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you're going to do it when things are coming at you fast and furious in training camp.
So in the replace, they got to bring another guy in. I mean, they only have 2 guys on the roster. Mm-hmm. Do they go, down that undrafted free agent route, or do you think you go more to a veteran guy who is kind of kicked it? Yesterday Adam mentioned Nick Mullins, Sean Mannion. I mean, those kind of journeyman type of undrafted guys who have some veteran experience. Do you go down that road, or you think that there are guys who are still out there that played college last year that have some intrigue?
Yeah, I'm sure there are some college guys that haven't latched on the rosters yet, but I think that I really liked Adam's point when he said Nick Mullins, because I think Nick Mullins would be a great fit as a quarterback 3. He's well versed in the West Coast offense. So does he have a big arm to push the ball down the field? No, but he's confident enough. He processes things relatively quickly. And look, he gives you everything you need from a number 3 quarterback, and that would give proper support behind Jalen Hurts with Joe Flacco, and then a guy like Nick Mullins who's seen a lot in his time in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with the West Coast offense is something that Adam brought up yesterday. Those are both guys. And Mullins, by the way, has 16 games of starting experience. If you can get a third guy who has started 16 games, you could do a lot worse than that. Mannion, doesn't interest me all that much. I think he started a game or 2. But Mullins, I'm a little surprised he's still out there. If you remember the game he played against Philly last year, he was the guy who threw that interception to Alex Singleton, who took it back for a touchdown. And then they benched him and brought C.J. Beathard in, who almost brought them back. But Mullins at least has started 16 games in his career. I know Trayvon Grimes also. Now, he was in injury designation, but you had kind of said pump the brakes on Grimes, everybody. You're getting a little too excited because people thought this guy's going to make the team. He's going to replace J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. But were you surprised that he didn't make it to training camp potentially yet, I guess?
Well, injuries are always it's a dicey situation. But I mean, again, if he is ready for training camp, he's a little bit behind the 8 ball, or he will be if it takes a little bit longer and he's healthy midway through training camp. That's why you don't want to jump the gun. He also hasn't faced live action in training camp. It's a lot different running around in shorts than when you have Darius Slay lined up across from you and you have to figure out a way to separate and come up with these contested catches and red zone plays. You know what I mean? There's so much that goes into it rather than, I think sometimes folks get intrigued with the name and the college, but you really have to look at what the player is good at and what he's not good at, what he needs to work on. And some of the things that he needs to work on are things that an NFL receiver you really have to have as an undrafted player. You really need to have that, like route running. That's a big thing. That I mean, if you're an undrafted player and you know how to run routes and separate, you have a chance. But if you're an unrefined route runner and questionable hands and things like that, you can have all the body control and the size and the catch radius all that you want. But the training camp comes down to consistency as a young player, and those are things that they're not really going to have time to really correct.
Andrew, I want to get your opinion on a couple of NFL stories that are happening right now. One, Green Bay, if Aaron Rodgers does not come back, your thoughts on Jordan Love. Where did you think of him coming out of the draft last year? Can he step right in and have the lineage of Favre, Rodgers, Love?
I think he's all right. I thought he was okay. I wasn't super high on him, to be honest with you. His play is too high and low. He's erratic with the ball. I think he takes a little bit too many chances, particularly his last season there at Utah State. The year before, he was much better, but he has a strong arm, and I think that he sees the field well, but I think he doesn't necessarily – I think he rushes things. And in the NFL, I feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure on him right now for him to seize control of that top spot with everything going on with Aaron Rodgers, that he may press a little bit. And I've seen him press before, and that leads to a lot of careless turnovers and things like that.
Yeah, now that being said, if you're Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers is saying, I don't want to play, do you just say, fine, don't play, or do you try to help him out by trading him? I'd almost be like, you don't want to play? Fine, don't play. I'll fine you.
I mean, that's the thinking. That's the school of thought that I would go with.
I guess the other side of it is, Andrew.
When you're Aaron Rodgers, you have a little bit of leverage.
You do, but I guess the other side is, okay, then if I could trade Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to get back multiple picks, and I guess you're kind of cut your nose to spite your face. But why am I going to help another team out and give them Aaron Rodgers? I'll just say, Aaron Rodgers, you don't want to play? Don't play. Fine.
I feel like they eventually have to mend the fences and find a way to make it work for Green Bay. Because, like you said, why hand a team a quarterback who's still, a top quarterback in the league, and another team veteran and a Super Bowl contender, right?
Yeah,
I think they know what they have there, and they may be pumping up Jordan Love into the media, but they may have their own concerns, and they may see other things that sort of the things that a lot of the draft evaluators, including myself, saw. I don't necessarily know if Jordan Love has it between the ears right now to be a franchise signal caller. So, I mean, eventually those things are going to start to creep up in training camp when he's going to force some throws that are going to get you in trouble. And I think that they're going to need to find a way to get Aaron Rodgers back in the fold. And I think ultimately that's what they're going to have to do.
Here's Andrew DiCecco, DiCecco NFL. It's funny. I was where was I the other day? It wasn't near here. I mean, I was pretty far out of the range. I mean, our signal goes pretty far. And the guy says, man, that DiCecco really knows his stuff. And I said, you're right, he does. He loved all the draft coverage, the offseason coverage as well. And Andrew, of course, on Tuesdays and Fridays for Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. And he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks for knowing your stuff, Andrew. I appreciate you, bud.
My pleasure, Mike. Have a great weekend.
You do the same. It's Happy Hour Friday here on the Sports Bash. That's Andrew DiCecco. He is Football at 4. This is 97.3 ESPN.